about yourself, what you're doing, what you've been doing, what's your next plans?
So I'm one of those people who can't seem to stop new ventures. This is my 12th. I had the opportunity to work for a few decades in video games and building a lot of fun. And about 2015, I started to look at blockchain and realized that it was going to be the next thing. It was going to be the innovation that drove not just video games, but drove the entire planet. And I got the opportunity to start working with the project, wrote the white paper in 2017 for Prasaga. And our original thesis was, if we, with our interoperability, we had the message server that allowed us to make any smart device talk to any other smart device. If we could take that data and give it to the humans versus the Facebooks, and allow them to monetize their own data across data lakes and analytics, that would give the autonomy back to the human. And that was really important to us. The challenge was we had the technology to do the ability to move the data. What we didn't have was the blockchain to be able to keep track of it all. And we went around in 2018 and got a small round. We're ready to do our big push. And our investor says, well, how are you going to scale? We said, well, we scale really well. We've got the servers, the message server bus, it all works. And they said, no, we want to know how you're going to scale the blockchain. We'd said we were blockchain agnostic. Whoever is going to scale, we were going to be on. We spent the next 6 months looking at every project. And at the end of the day, the challenge was there wasn't one that had the right architecture to actually be able to scale. Moment of truth, call with the wife. And with the CTO that we have, he said, no, we can do this. We can build the next blockchain. And that's what we set out to do in 2018. We've gotten the patents put together so that we can open source this to the planet. We've actually proven a piece of it that's very important by having brought out the main technology and showcased it over on Hyperledger. We're kind of old school that way. We kind of like to be able to prove even to ourselves that the tech's going to work before we take other people's money.
So Jay, the title of this panel is, or this discussion is, the smart assets, the birth of a new era. So I think we all know what the smart contract is, but I mean, this is the first time probably hear about the smart assets.
Yeah.
What is it?
So smart contracts were the big innovation. When Ethereum came out with here, let's put script behind a transaction, be able to make it more than just moving a token from one account to another. And we can actually put logic around that transaction. That was a major innovation. What we discovered when we went to figure out how to scale it was that was also the major limitation. At its fundamental, smart contracts serialize. There's a thing called Amdahl's law. Amdahl worked for IBM in the 60s. He created an actual way to measure on mainframes what was going to be parallel in terms of transactions and what would be serialized. And by running that law against smart contracts, it's not me saying this, it's just like physics, it will never scale. It will always serialize. So we had to come up with a new approach, and that's what we call smart assets. We called it smart objects for a minute, but smart assets makes more sense. Still all the same logic, and a lot more actual logic can be going on because we've built what we call a full system on object model operating system. So just like your phone, your laptop, your smartwatch, all have an operating environment to work in. That's what we built for the blockchain. That allows us to move state from an array in a smart contract to actually being in your account under your unique ledger ID on the blockchain. The ability to move that state in your account from shard to shard or from one node of a network to another node allows us to get full parallel processing. We can always have complete settlement, complete truth in your account at all times and still be able to do that in parallel with other transactions. We don't have to wait for settlement of one smart contract to execute another.
So what I'm seeing is Prasaga is playing at a different league or maybe a different game than most of the startups now in the blockchain. So you're trying to bring a full layer one protocol to the business. So this will provide scalability. What else? What other features can we think of?
Well, so that operating system is still the fundamental. Just like when you're writing software, let's say for a Windows machine, you're going to be writing to the class tree that runs your software. So you're going to run to the Windows class tree. That runs right now on your laptop. What we've done is move that to the cloud or to the global computer system of the blockchain. And now those same class trees, the same code that you would reference to run on your computer, you're now referencing across the global internet. And that allows us to inherit or take the shared code, this global namespace, and be able to make applications happen that much easier, that much faster. With us, you're not writing in a specialty language like Solidity, where you have to pay $500,000 a year to get somebody to tell you how to write a smart contract. You're writing in whatever language you need to write in to get your application done, because you're writing to an operating system.
So, I mean, given that I'm not the expert in blockchain, I'm a CNBC
And
anchor, so
I just play one on
I'm
TV.
industrial finance. So let me ask you this. From what I heard, can I compare like what you're doing to the blockchain is something similar to what Amazon's AWS is providing corporates and other institutions?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's very similar in the sense that when we used to build the companies in the past that I had, we'd have to go build our own server system. We'd have to do, and now we just get those services from the cloud, right? Similarly, what we're doing is allowing that whole blockchain as a single layer. You're not having to have multiple layers. All of it runs on one layer, accessible off of the cloud. I think of it a little bit like we've got the blockchain, which is your smartphone, and now we've got the ability to have that application store, the app store, so that everybody can have access. The key in my learning and in all of the different startups I've done is if you can solve ease of use, if you can make it so everybody can have access to it, you're going to get adoption. If it's still too hard, which is what the blockchain is right now, it's not going to get the adoption it needs. It's not going to get the amount of momentum and flow that it needs. That's the major innovation, is that we've taken the friction out and we've made it easy.
Awesome. So, Jay, today we were talking about, during the first panel, there was so much of discussion on regulation. And I think regulation is a very important aspect of developing the industry. And I've seen Hester Pierce, she's the SEC commissioner in the US, was quoted saying that Prasaga is the TSA pre-check for the regulatory use of blockchain. So what does it mean? Is it a kind of like a green light from the SEC that you can go ahead at some time?
I would love for that to be the case. No, we're a different model, right? We're not using smart contracts. So it was important that we talked to the EU, we talked to the SEC. We make sure that any regulatory framework that came out wasn't going to be a barrier to us because we do it differently. So we were explaining this not only to the labs and to others, but we had the call with Hester and her many attorneys in the room. And we were explaining why, for example, by using our model, you could have the certification of a Reg D offering, for example. And if you were able to meet all the certifications on the blockchain, that you were Reg D compliant, and that you had the accredited investor on the other side that was qualified to purchase, that transaction could happen, and you'd never have to run an audit against that company because you'd already have them certified. And that's when she said, so if I understand correctly, you're the TSA pre-check for the regulatory use of blockchain. course, I waited about 2 seconds, said, "Can I quote you on that?" She said yes. And it is a really important epiphany she had, and a way to explain it, because when we're talking to automotive supply chain, same thing. If you can have those certifications, the actual metallurgical composition, the specialty chemical composition, and have that on the blockchain tagged to that part, that all of that provenance goes all the way back to the DNA of the parts. So if we ever have a situation where there's a recall, instead of taking months to figure out, well, what was wrong with the part, you go to the big filing cabinets, I'm told, big steel filing cabinets that record all of these certifications, and you fax them over to the compliance office. Now it's all real time on the blockchain. Everybody knows the provenance of that entire car down to the part and the actual metallurgical composition of the bolt that failed. And that will revolutionize not only regulatory compliance for organizations, whether in pharmaceuticals or medical devices or cannabis. Cannabis seems to be very excited about this. We got to know what's in whatever we have, and we have to know that it's true, and that the blockchain allows us to have that kind of transparency. And the provenance all the way through the transaction process. That like they said earlier, that the person producing the actual coffee or the gold or the diamonds or the energy is getting compensated, and that all the way through there's a fair market through it. I think that's going to change. I think it's going to change all of our lives.
So, Jay, you do have Michael Holdman, David Berberman, and if you haven't heard about these gentlemen, they are maybe we are using their softwares now in our cars and our routers at home, internet, and together you bring almost more than a century of experience. I'm not saying that you guys are old, but maybe you started at a very young age.
No, we're embracing it. We're old.
And when I think about you three working together, I feel like it's a kind of a dream team, similar to Chicago Bulls back in the 90s, where Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman playing together. So how did you get all together, and what's the dream now?
I certainly feel that way. I've had the opportunity to work on some very exciting projects in my career. This is the first time I've ever felt like, okay, and I've never been the smartest guy at the table. That's not my role. I'm the marketing guy. But with David Berberman specifically, and Michael will tell you the same thing, he's actually done the innovation that helps write the internet that we run on today. He sat next to Vince Cerf and that wrote TC, and then there was IP. He did NAT and PAT, which was network address translation and port address translation. It's what make TC and IP work. So if you use your phone or anything on the internet, you've already had some of David's innovations. He's also written another 50 of the high-speed protocols that run the internet today. When we sat down and we had that moment of truth where we said, okay, how are we going to scale this? And David said, I think we can figure this out. I didn't know who David was the way I do today. And when he started to work through the problem, he says, and Albert Einstein says it really well, we can't solve the problems that we have using the same thinking that got us here. It's kind of what happened with smart contracts for us. What we did do with David is he'd already written a operating system for pinpoint tablet computing back when OS2 from IBM was first coming out in the 80s. So yeah, we've been around a minute, but he'd also helped to write the actual collision solution for the internet that makes it all work together. Gateway Computer contracted with him to lead the team that helped reduce the network collision on the internet, and in 2000 did that. So he understands not just how the protocol is written, he understands how it functions and that was really important as we wrote, our blockchain protocol as well as the operating system. We knew what was going to work and what wasn't going to work.
Awesome. So Jay, let's look at Dubai for a second. So, I mean, there's so many buzzwords now in the blockchain. One of them is DeFi, let's say, decentralized finance. And being a decentralized finance blockchain firm now operating here in Dubai, and I want to use Prasaga. Can you give me like a kind of use case? How can I be operating at this?
Again,
platform?
it's that fundamental we talked about of the fact that your actual assets are going to be stored in your account on the blockchain. So you could fractionalize your stock yourself, or your real estate, or any major asset that you have. And because that asset is going to be accessible, the platforms that would build on top of our technology would have not only much faster settlement, but they'd also have the DNA of the logic much easier to code and get to market. So it's not so much that we're changing what's possible, we're changing how fast it can be built and how easily it can be maintained. One of the challenges we have is that every time you want to write a new smart contract, it's kind of like if you're writing a Word document and you had to go program the word processor first, and then you could write your Word document. That's how a smart contract works right now. There isn't the code reuse, there isn't the extensibility that we're able to provide with an operating system.
So when you say that you can write in any language, it
Yeah.
really means any language.
Well, okay, let me be very clear. We're still in testnet.
Okay.
It's our intention, because we actually have the what we call the class manager infrastructure that takes care of writing to the blockchain, that you're going to be able to write in whatever object-oriented program is available. We'll take care of that. Right now, we're going to be in a modified Python. We're building most of our core operating environment in Golang. All of that's happening at the core level. But the real goal is that you're not going to have to learn a specialty language in order to write in this next generation of technology.
Just make me feel good about it. I'm learning Python. Am I doing good? I mean, Python is one of the languages that
Absolutely. Yeah. Why wouldn't we? It's a good object-oriented. Yeah. Well, and if my CTO is here, it's a modified Python, because it doesn't quite work well enough for us. He's written 2 languages, writes in 60. So he doesn't really care what language we pick. We're going to support it.
Fantastic. So I think one of the things most investors would like to know about as well here is what type of coin is the data or data grid token, and what is it, and how does it differ from other tokens now available?
Well, okay, we only have 20 minutes. So the data grid token, which we're rebranding to the Saga coin, when we were doing that IoT smart city, it made sense to have power grid, data grid. But now we're going to tell a different story, which is the Saga coin. The main differentiator that we've been working very, very hard on is, and you have to understand, we're old. Trying to use a speculative currency to do transactions on a day-to-day basis hurts our brains. If Ethereum goes up, do I buy or do I hold or do I wait? You know, so rather than trying to go to a third-party stable coin, we actually built our currency architecture so that we stabilize against our own internal GDP, our own digital gross domestic product, as it were. What the actual transactions going on the network, we can mint and burn and create a monetary policy similar to any current fiat organization. And that's where we're putting the most of our resources in terms of mathematicians, to make sure we get that right. Because at the end of the day, we'll start as a deflationary token, as every token investor likes to hear right now. But over time, we're going to become the currency you invest with versus the currency that you're investing in.
Did you have an economist writing this saga?
We have a number of economists. I cannot say who.
Okay.
They're currently finishing up the bill that just went through Congress.
Fantastic. And one last question, Jay. Dubai, what's the plans here?
That I will say, we're going to talk at the dinner about more. But
can you just give me a sneak peek?
Well, so
what is it?
Our belief is that if you're going to get the kind of innovation that we want to have on our blockchain, you have to build a collaborative. And that's what we're doing, our first regional collaborative here in Dubai. And that will be to not only incentivize people to build on our blockchain, but to help invest in the whole ecosystem of innovation that's happening here. This is really the place on the planet. I've looked at everything, and this is where it's happening. And so we want to make this our first collaborative that we're going to be putting in. It's going to be a regional one. There's going to be a lot of other local ones coming out of this. But for here, this will be the hub for our work on this side of the planet, even before we do anything in Europe. Whether we've got a lot of plans for Southeast Asia and North America, but this is going to be our first collaborative.
And we're looking forward to welcoming you here in Dubai. Thank you very much, Jay. I truly enjoyed this chat with you, and looking forward to see even the gala dinner. I think we'll have another short
and if
speech.
anybody's interested in the project, obviously I have to say, please get in touch. We're looking for people of purpose that were interested in being part of this process.
Thank you. A big round of applause to Jay. Thank you very much.
Big round of applause. And Hussein, big round of applause to you for learning Python. I love Python.